Hi, Mark here from the Tangent-Bound Podcast Network and host of the flagship show, the Tangent-Bound Podcast. Did you know that we over at Tangent-Bound are always looking for amazing podcasts to promote? And did you also know that we are also proud nerds and geeks of everything from movies, music, gaming, TV shows, and comic books to wrestling, MMA, soccer, and football? Whatever you can nerd or geek out about, we've got it. And if you're interested, we can help you find it. And if you're a show looking for a place to call home, we've got you covered. Side effects may include upset stomach, dizziness, tumors, shakes, and in some rare cases, death from excessive laughter. Though to be fair, it's only sometimes. Other side effects may include diarrhea, gallstones, heart palpitations, and strong desire for cookies on the dark side. Talk to your doctor and visit TangentBoundNetwork.com and see if Tangent-Bound Network is right for you.
Life sucks to the last drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. Life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. Life sucks all of the time, so stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
Welcome to the Crazy Life, everyone. My name's Jen. I am your hostess for the evening. And with me, as always, we have Brian and no Shadow.
No.
But Hedo, I'm sure, is out there making some sweet music for the world.
Yeah.
He's been doing a lot of stuff with Doghouse, his band, that he's in and doing lots of gigs. And this summer, I'm sure they're quite hopping.
Hope so.
Well, that's what it looks like from Facebook. And we know Facebook does not lie.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Nope, not at all.
Yep. Exactly. Jeez. So, Brian, how are you? How you been? What's been going on?
Oh, it's been a thing. I've been, I don't know. I just haven't really had much energy lately.
Yeah.
I just have had no drive, not just energy, just no real want to do much of anything. And it's not just recently, actually. I mean, it's been quite a while. I haven't really done a lot of like socializing and different stuff. I talked about that last time, but it's continued to where I'm just, part of it's the heat. I know that. Like, I don't want to go out because it's hot, and I don't do well with hot. So that's a big part of it. But even if it wasn't really hot, I don't know how much I'd be doing. But it's, I'm very much like in that stuck kind of mindset again of I want to find a direction to point myself, and I can't seem to figure out what that is, unfortunately. And so it's, it's not been terrible, but it's just like I really have just wanted to just lay in bed. I don't think it's really been like, I don't know. I mean, it could be depression based, but I don't really feel the weight that I normally feel with when I have a depressed kind of cycle. So I don't know if it's that or not, but whatever. Boy, I'll tell you what, I got to push into my anxiety the other night though, because I was with my brother the night that it just dumped rain here.
Yeah.
Right. And for anyone not familiar, like we got, the storms have moved across the country and we had hours of just dumping rain, just so much rain. And we were actually out in it. Like I thought we were just going to go over to like Target, and when we left it wasn't bad. It was raining, but it wasn't terrible, And we went over to GameStop, went to Target. We come out of Target, and I mean the sky just opened and all the rain came.
Oh boy.
So then I'm thinking, okay, we're going to probably head back to my house because this is heavy rain and whatever. no, he decides he wants to go down to like Meyer and, whatever. So we're driving, and that wasn't that bad.
Mhm.
When we left there is when the rain really got bad.
Yeah.
And then he wanted to go see, because he had lost his power. So did my brother, or my other brother, and so did my nephew. And he wanted to go check on them, basically, to see if they had gotten their power back yet. So we're going down Alexis, and there's parts of Alexis, sorry for those who aren't local, it's a main road in the city we're in. So there are various parts of Alexis that have no power. So there's no traffic lights. It's pouring rain and windy, so you can barely see. So we're going down this, and I'm just like, oh God, like my brother's smart enough to stay out of the curb lane so you don't, drown your car or throw water everywhere. Unfortunately, there were some other people that weren't that smart, and flying through it, just completely wiping out your visibility in the process. But so I'm in I don't like riding in cars for very long anyway, right? That's A.
Yeah.
I don't like riding in cars when you have torrential rain. B, because I can't see. And that is the thing that makes me the most uncomfortable in a car. If I can't see what's going on, my fight or flight starts kicking in hard, and I start going into panic mode. So, we're doing this, and then, and my brother's a great driver. He's seen it all. He's been through pretty much anything you can be, have gone through, and he doesn't panic easily. So he's great for me to ride with in that regard. But it was just the idea that, a lot of my noobs were kind of being pushed into pretty hard by being in the car the longer and longer we're riding around in this weather and all this. And we were safe, we were fine. But, in the moment,
Right.
you're very much like, So, but yeah, because he came down for a while because he had no power. So he wanted to charge his phone, and he wanted to, not sit in the dark.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, sure, no problem, but I was just, and then finally we get by his house, and we saw the power was out. And also, turning down the roads and stuff, there were a lot of tree branches down and different stuff,
definitely.
And also, you can't see potholes when it rains like that because they're full and there's so much
Right.
water on the road. I know, like, that kind of weather, I remember riding with you, and I know you're terrified driving in that kind of weather because you can't see the road, basically,
Right.
because of the
I
glare
have
and all that.
partial night blindness
Yeah.
when it comes to rain and not.
So it was like and it was like that for me. Like, I was having a hard time seeing the lines and stuff on the road. That's how hard it was raining. And even with the wipers on full blast, it was barely keeping ahead. And finally, after we went to his house, I by his house, and he still didn't have power. And I was like, I need to go home. I was like, I can't go anywhere else. I'm like, I have to go home. I was like, I need to get inside and feel safe again, because my anxiety is starting to really ratchet up here. And,
Yeah.
And he was fine with that. He would, we came back here, and I was okay. It was just, I haven't had something in a while really push me into, especially in a car. I haven't had a situation where I'm feeling like I need out, like, so, and that was all my brain was doing. And once I got in the house, I was here for a few minutes, and immediately, things started to calm down for me because I was safe. I was back in my bubble. But, that was, not fun, but also probably, not all bad for me because I haven't had to push into that in a long time. It's probably not a bad thing to have to push into it occasionally.
Yeah.
To, use the tools that you have and all that kind of stuff, just to, make sure that you're not just living in the bubble, basically. Exposure's probably not all terrible. So, and like I said, I it wasn't that I truly didn't feel safe, but my brain was very much like, this is not okay. This is not okay. This is not, So, also, there was part of me that was like, why are we in this? Like, what are you doing? Like, why are we driving in this?
That's what I was thinking, but I know your brother
Yeah,
too.
he wanted to, and I know what it was. My nephew had his power out, and his basement is prone to flooding.
Yeah.
And he basically he wanted to check to see if they needed any help or whatever. And I'm like, well, you could text him, and if he needs help, we could, then we could go over. But we don't need to,
Right.
but whatever. So by that point, my other brother had gotten his power back, but my nephew and Daryl, the brother I was with, they had not gotten theirs back. So it was still, still stunk for them, especially Jake, because they did get some water in the basement. So I don't know how much, but hopefully he learned from last time he got water in his basement and kept stuff off the floor, because you definitely learned that. So anyway, so there was that went on, and like I said, that was something that I need to do. And I was thinking the other day too, and I've been so bad about my last therapy appointment. I don't even remember when it was scheduled for, and I couldn't go, and I still have not made another appointment.
Yeah.
So it's like Monday, I need to make sure that I get up and make an appointment, because it's been a while, and I need to sort that out. But and I had a weird thing the other day, excuse me, that was for the first time in all the years I've been on Twitter, I got locked out of Twitter.
What?
Because somebody I follow and I've had interactions with, she posted, like, how do you people keep your in-ear earbuds in? Mine keep falling out, basically, And most people were, like, giving good advice, like, you need the grip things that go in there. I forgot what they're called, but the little, they generally have different sizes. You probably need either a bigger or a smaller size, because whatever size you have is not fitting appropriately, right? Yeah. That's the real answer. I put them in and wrap tape around your head, meaning taping them in place, right?
Right.
Well, as soon as I clicked post, I got a thing that popped up from Twitter that says you violated the Twitter rules for suicide and like self-harm, basically.
Oh, geez.
And I'm like, are you fucking... Oh, sorry. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this... It's like, really? Me? Like, I am like one of the least controversial people on Twitter. Always have been. I run from this stuff. Also, I have a podcast where we talk about mental health stuff, and we're positive about trying to prevent these... I would never tell somebody to harm themselves. So, but of course, their bot doesn't have context. So as a result, and it's like, I appealed it, and it got, and it's like, yeah, okay, that's because I can't provide context. If a person read my comment, they would understand that I wasn't saying, wrap your face in tape and harm yourself or something like that. I in no way at all, So, yeah, so I got a 12-hour ban for this comment, even though it was absolutely just me being a dumb, just making a dumb joke. It was like, wasn't even remotely about harming a person. The only harm that would come from what I was suggesting is peeling the tape off. That would suck.
Ouch.
Yeah. Because I'm just picturing you having them in your ears and you're just wrapping tape around your head to try to hold them in place, not suffocate yourself or anything along those lines. Like I said, God forbid, I would not ever tell somebody to harm themselves. That is for sure not who I am.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and just the absurdity of it, because, like as other people, I posted on other social medias that, basically to let people know, hey, if you try to contact me on Twitter, I can't so much reply for 12 hours. And people were like, are you kidding me? You kind of a thing. I had people DM me on Instagram and they were like, you? And I was like, yeah. I was like, I for sure didn't mean that. And the person that I was referring to, she never even saw the comment, like, because I had to delete the comment immediately. Otherwise, they would have permanently banned me, basically, if I refused. So, basically my penance was a 12-hour ban, and I had to delete the comment. Yeah. So when she found out, she was like, oh my God, that was on my thing. And I was like, yeah, I was just being an idiot kind of a thing. And she's like, I would not have taken that. And I was like, yeah, I didn't think so, or I would never post it.
Yeah.
If I thought for a second a comment I made might make someone think of harming themselves, I would delete it immediately and apologize. It's not who I am. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like, geez.
Wow.
So all I could do was laugh at it, though, right? I mean, I was mad, But I also was just like, all I could do was laugh because it was so ridiculous that, again, it's like, yeah, I'm going to be, Johnny, every week on the podcast. Please get help if you need help, if you're feeling blah, 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 and then I'm going to also go on Twitter and tell people to harm themselves. It's like, yeah, not so much. So, yeah, that kind of cracked me up. But also, like I said, also made me mad because I couldn't use Twitter for 12 hours. And I have a lot of friends on Twitter, like actual people I have conversations with and groups I'm in. And it's like, oh, great. Now I can't do anything in these for 12 hours. I couldn't even, I couldn't react in groups. Like I couldn't post a GIF, nothing. I couldn't do anything. So it was like, okay. Although it was weird, it did let me send a couple of DMs because I tried to DM a couple people to let them know that I was, banned. And then I was like, oh, duh, you can't, but then it did look like those went through. So maybe they went through later or something once the ban was over. I don't know, but it was so ridiculous. So
It's funny.
yeah. So I think that's about it for me. I can't really think much of anything else.
Yeah. It's interesting because, things with work or work, and it's fine. Everything is going along as expected type of a situation.
Yeah.
I am in the process of interviewing for something new. I do have one job that I'm really trying not to be excited as I want to be over.
You're pulling my old move of like not letting yourself get hopeful because you figure the rug's going to get yanked out, or
I gotta say though, I mean, I interviewed a lot over my course of my career.
Yeah.
And I'm always a pretty good interviewer.
Yeah.
Occasionally I have some stinkers, but
yeah.
for the most part, I handle myself and I'm very articulate. So I can usually go through anything that they put at me and come out looking decent. This is by far, hands down, the best I've ever interviewed. Period.
Right.
Like I was dropping the mic when I left the building.
Right.
It was they asked me to explain my career, my who I am, my career, and all that stuff, right? By the time I had finished, I had given them each job that I did, the key factor in each job that fit their job description that they were looking for. And this is what I learned, and this is where I picked this skill up, and this is where I picked this skill up. And here's an interesting story about this situation. By the time I had finished, and it was, 15 minutes. We all know I can talk. We know that. But I wasn't like over the top talking about any one thing. I just hit all these little points along the way. And when I was finished, it was with the co-owner and the HR rep. The co-owner looked down at her sheet and said, you've hit every single question.
Yeah.
So we, and the HR woman said about the same thing. So we just started talking. So as we're talking and they were mentioning some of the key points of the job, and one of the situations, they're like, yeah, we get emails from sales, hot, very typical.
Right.
That's usually what happens.
Well, and by that, you mean like important, right?
Well, they feel it's very important.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, just for anyone who's not in the know. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. They, in the subject line, it'll start with like one hot. And then when they feel that the one hot's not getting your attention enough, they'll add more hot to it.
Right. Similar to how people used to put the 911 in the, like if you had a pager.
Yes, exactly.
Oh man, I got to call them back.
So it's one of those things that it's absurd because no one pays attention to them anymore anyways, because you use, what they call it, crying wolf. There you go.
Right.
It gets to the point where it's just crying wolf. And I said, yeah, it's what they don't understand. There's two aspects to it. I said, one, they don't understand that the customer is using the word hot, but without any context, you have no idea what that means.
Right.
So
Yeah, is it time sensitive? Is it just actually very important? Is there a mistake they need corrected? Yeah, right.
it's like, I need this right away. Okay, what is your right away? Is right away today? Is
Yeah.
right away Monday? I mean, you're shutting down. Great. When are you shutting down? When is your shutdown time and date?
Yeah,
Are they being preemptive because they don't know or whatever? Well, you got to get the context, because on the context, you can figure out how to prioritize your response. And sometimes it takes throwing a ton of money at it. Well, if it doesn't need to be there overnight, it could be there in 2 days. It's going to be a lot less money.
right.
So, these things are very important. It's that the second aspect to it is it's a trust thing. If they don't trust that you're seeing their email or giving them the priority that they feel they need to have,
Yeah,
they're going to continue going hot, 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 and making it even bigger, 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 because they aren't trusting you, which is not built overnight, obviously. So it'll take some time to build that trust up. But if you really have good trust with someone, they don't feel the need to put the hot in there, because they already know that when they send something to you, you're jumping on it.
yeah, exactly.
And the co-owners, and the co-owner stopped, and she's like, "You are 100% right. I never thought about that, right? But you're right. It's the baseline is about trust." And I'm like, "Yeah, this is things I've come across in my career, blah, blah, blah." Well, then she was telling me, because I have a lot of background in rail, and she was telling me that they don't do a ton with rail. It's mostly truck. And like the inbound that comes in on rail, it's FOB, it's freight on board, which means the supplier pays the freight,
Yeah,
arranges the freight and pays the freight, and then passes the freight, the cost on the customer, which would be us.
right.
And I was like, a lot of times that's the best way to do it. I said, but have you ever taken the moment to cross-check what they're charging you for freight compared to what you could get it if you were doing the freight? And she's like, "No, I never thought to do that." Like, yeah, because everybody pads. We all know that. They're going to pass it on. They're going to little extra.
Like any place that you typically, like if you order something from a place and it's not going to cost $10 to ship it, but they charge you $10, and you're like, really? Like okay, it was the old shipping and handling move.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. They're going to add theirs on, and that's expected.
Right.
But there are opportunities sometimes where you can get bundled deals and stuff from carriers and things, and there is potential you could save money. You just have to look for it.
Yeah.
And again, she stopped and looked at me. She's like, "I never thought about that, but you're right. That could be a potential cost savings." I'm like, this is true. So in this interview, I told them who I am, why they need me, and give them a cost savings, and give them another way of looking at their problem, which is hot emails.
Right.
So at this point, they're talking to me what the benefits are and stuff, and blah, and what the compensation would be, which would be very nice, and quarterly bonuses and all this good jazz, and I had stars in my eyes,
Yeah.
and then we ended up finishing up and stuff and walking away. But when I got out to my car, it's been a long time since I was almost doing like the victory,
Right.
Meanwhile,
Meanwhile, they looked at each other. And they're like, "God, what a know-it-all, right?" I'm kidding.
Big old thing of Gatorade, just
Yeah.
put it on my head.
Yeah. Got a parade. You paid for a band.
And it's one of those moments that I just felt so confident and so good about that interview
Yeah.
that I'm going to be disappointed, of course, but if I don't get the job, I'm not mad at it.
Yeah.
I know, I have no doubt in my mind that I gave them everything that they need to make the decision based upon me.
Right.
And if somebody else comes in and one-ups me because of their background, because of whatever, they deserve it.
Yeah. Well, it's something a lot of people have a hard time understanding sometimes, is that sometimes, like you watch, there was one of the food competition shows I was watching the other day, and when the two people it came down to, to send someone home, they basically told the one person, they were like, basically like, it wasn't that you did anything wrong, it's just the other person just did better. And unfortunately that means you're going home, kind of a thing. But it's like, it's hard for us to accept that kind of scenario, that someone could just be a better candidate than us, because, a lot of times we pump ourselves up to where, or in our head, we've already gotten the job, right? Like, because you read whatever it is, or a dating profile or whatever the thing is, and you're like, well, I'm perfect for this, and you don't realize that on the other side, they might go, okay, well, we have 10 boxes. She checks off 9, which normally would get you the job, but the other person maybe checks off 10, or maybe you check 10 and they somehow invented an 11th box, it's just, there can be a situation where you are a great candidate, but unfortunately somebody maybe just by a hair nudges you out or something. And that doesn't mean anything less about you as a person or whatever,
And that's the thing. I mean, this is exactly what I want to do. I want to feel like when I leave that table that they know me.
Yeah. Well, you left it all out there, as they say in sports. You laid it all on the line, and if you lose, well, you lost,
Yes.
Yeah.
And the other really fun part about the whole thing is it would be a sizable increase in my compensation, but I'd be at the low end of what they're looking to hire for.
Right.
So
there's potential for room to move more money.
Room to grow with the money. And I'm a cheap option for them.
Yes, which should work in your favor. Yeah.
I would be happy with their low end. They would be happy with their low end.
Yeah. Whereas someone who's maybe already been doing this job for a while might want more of that middle ground or toward the high end. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, it's a really good fit.
Yeah.
From my perspective. So we'll see. I won't know anything until mid to late next week. It sounds like. So we'll see what that comes back with.
Right.
So I'm in the process of doing that right now and getting all that settled and stuff. And so that's going really good. And I've been, as my mom calls it, nesting. I am not pregnant, so it is not really nesting, but I've been redecorating. That's what we're calling this.
Yeah.
I've been spending a little time redecorating my place and just, emptying boxes I've been traveling around with for years on end.
I think you're really overall, I think, settling in is what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, I think it doesn't feel like a transit, like you're in transition, because like you said, you're emptying boxes, you're getting rid of long-term things, you're finding pieces to fill out your place. I think that's more of what it is you're really kind of settling into where you're at now.
And I think I'm doing that in a variety of different places in my life, and not just in my apartment. Yeah. I met someone, and we've been talking for a little bit now. We've seen each other twice, and after our first date, felt so comfortable and so natural. I deleted my apps.
Yeah.
He didn't say delete your apps. I didn't say, hey, I'm deleting my apps. It wasn't anything like that. It was so, I don't even, these are irritating. It's like, I don't, it would bink at me, and I'm like, I don't even have any desire to go and see who sent me a message or what's going on there. Right. So I'm like, well, this is telling me that I've known for a little while now that I need to take a break from the apps, but it's also me telling me that you need to see this through and see what's happening here.
Yeah.
And life has not been working in our favor. So we haven't had a chance to see each other much over the last week and a half or so, which in the past would drive me crazy. I'd be crawling the walls and so super frustrated and pushing him to figure out when we can get together and see each other and all this other stuff. And I don't feel like it. I don't feel I need to. I just don't,
Right. Not because you don't care about the situation, but because you're comfortable in the space. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm comfortable in this space, and I'm really getting much stronger with my female relationships. I have 2 very wonderful women in my life that, if I want to go to dinner or I want to hang out with someone, I can usually grab one or both of them. And, and I'm doing a lot more with my mom, who is a very good friend of mine, as well as my mother. So I'm feeling very fulfilled and comfortable in the place I'm at in my life. And after coming through so many years of turmoil and being very uncomfortable, I guess I never really thought about it, but I'm figuring me out.
Right.
It's really wild how it just kind of happened, and it's seemingly overnight, but I'm sure it didn't happen overnight. It's nice. I'm just very comfortable, and I've been enjoying even my time by myself. If the sun's shining, I go and I sit out by the pool and I read my book, and I haven't felt this content with things. And it's so odd to say because work has been kind of turmoil. So it's odd to say that I'm content with the way things are, but yet I am.
Well, I think you can, because you can be content and have an aspect that maybe you're not content in, but you know how it is, like, you can, across the board, you're content type of thing, even if every category is not ticked off, I think you still can be, and you're working on finding contentment in the spot where you don't feel stuck. You're not in a position to where you're like, I don't have options here. You're very much looking and finding potential options. And that definitely will help too. If you felt like you couldn't leave and couldn't find another job, like if the job market was horrible and all that kind of stuff, it might be a little different for you. But, then, fortunately, especially in the field that you're in, the job market's not horrible. So,
No, it's difficult because I'm at that point in my career that I have a very strong resume of experiences, but I also come with a fairly good price tag.
Yeah.
So it is seemingly more challenging than I expected to be able to find a position that needs all of my skills to warrant my price tag.
Well, I think that's why the one you talked about really fits, because it's actually a step up from what you're doing. Right. So because of that, like you said, they can look at that and go, well, she hasn't done this job per se, the title wise, right?
Yeah.
But the price point comes at a price that's low, so we can train or fill in a little bit till she's where we need her, and we're coming out cheaper. So I think you're right. Is like, that's probably a really good selling point if you're trying to move up a little bit. Is like, hey, look, I can show that I can do all of the things that need to be done, and I also can come at a lower price point, basically, which... Not that you're underselling yourself at all. It's just that it's the truth. If the market is X dollars and you're new into that level, you can't expect to go top dollar, No.
And that's, I think we didn't talk specific numbers.
Right.
But they know I do my research, and I know they did their research. And without saying so, we're going to be close. I know we're going to be close. If they make me an offer, it'll be very close, if not right on point to what I'm expecting. Mm-hmm. And it's a step up, but it's not, it's going to be a learning curve, yes, but it's not Mount Everest learning curve either.
That's why I said your resume...
I'm jumping in over my head.
Yeah, your resume dictates that you can do the tasks. You just haven't had the title, and maybe... There's going to be a level of stuff you probably have not done because you haven't, technically been the leader or whatever. But aside from that, those are things that can be taught, though. Yeah. And that's minimal stuff.
Be one person. I'd be leading one person. Okay. But I will have to make bigger decisions on my own.
Yeah.
Than I have in the past, financial decisions and things.
Right.
So
there's
take a look
risk,
at to having my confidence and be able to say, you know what, we're going to make this decision. And if I'm questioned later, which I probably would be, I would be able to say, this is why I made the decision I made.
Okay.
So it's definitely, I have all the skills for it. It's them taking the chance that I can apply those skills in the way they want me to.
Right.
But it definitely, I can tell I got very positive vibes from them. So like I said, it's going to be one of those situations that if I don't get it, then kudos to that person because they slayed it.
Yeah. Well, and again, this is something that in the NFL, it's a garbage line, but there's truth to it, I think, in other places more so. But is sometimes when you interview, even if you don't get a job, sometimes you can make an impression. And sometimes it could lead to maybe they hire somebody else and it doesn't work out. Then maybe they still contact you down the road, or you know what I mean? Like, there is potential for that. Like I said, it's garbage in the NFL. They say it all the time. Oh, you blow them away. It's like, yeah, okay. You don't see them typically get a callback or something, but in the real world, it can happen where if you really impress somebody, or maybe they go, we need her on our staff. Like, is there somewhere else she fits, or is there something else that, so sometimes that can happen.
To me.
Yeah.
I bet that's the last job that I was in. I really wanted to get into the company that I'm in now.
Yeah.
And I interviewed for the first position, and I just barely missed out on it. The recruiter liked me so well. When I knew the position popped up, she remembered me, contacted me, and said, I know this isn't quite the same step, but I know you said you wanted to get in here.
Yeah.
This opportunity came up that I think you'd be a really good fit for it, that we'd be willing to work with you on compensation to get it where you need it to be, type of thing.
Yeah.
If you're interested
Exactly.
to interview for it.
Right.
And that's what I mean. I know I'm really good at interviewing. So because I've had the situations happen, like people remember me.
Right.
When I went into when I got the job at the place I'm in now, people from my original interview found out that I was working there and stopped by my desk to welcome me and say, we really loved your interview. Just, again, somebody was a little bit better. Is
Yeah.
basically what it was. It was, you were great. Just
Right.
someone happened to be just a touch better.
Right.
But we're really glad to see that you made it into the company and that you're here.
Yeah. What would be nice in a lot of those scenarios if they could be forthcoming and tell you what the difference was, right? Like, it'd just be nice sometimes to know, it's like, is it something you can work on, or is it just experience? Like, to where it's like, well, okay, they've done the job for 10 years. I've done it for 4. So I can understand hiring them, right? Like, those kind of things, like, and not so much for but just is there an aspect in my portfolio that's lacking so that I can strengthen it going forward, kind of a thing. And I know sometimes if you ask, places will tell you, but I also know some places won't, because sometimes they'll tell people that and it's an arbitrary kind of situation or whatever, but
In that case, I know it was experience.
yeah, which is understandable. It's,
I mean, as soon as I saw who got it, because, me being there, I
Right.
obviously knew who got it.
yeah,
And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, got it. It was just apparent from
Right.
the moment I saw him. And I'm like, yeah, he's just got more experience
Right.
and everything than I do.
that's why I said it's like something like that. It's like, well, you can't work on that. All you can do is just keep getting experience. You can't
Exactly.
add experience to your resume necessarily without, quickly. It just has to take the time.
Right, exactly.
Someday you'll be the one with the experience. Yeah.
So, so we'll see. We'll see how this is all going.
Yeah.
But, and I have some current plans I'm working on. I've got some future aspirations I'm working on. So, yeah, things are good. Things are going good. And now that I've said that, don't you dare turn it around and make me eat my own words. We were just talking earlier about how I have a rock and a banana, 2 people in my world.
Yeah.
One who's my rock and one who's a banana for me. And we were talking about it, and I said, don't you dare take my rock away and leave me banana all by myself.
Right.
Unfortunately, some things we cannot control in our world.
Yeah. Be your own rock.
Yes.
Yeah. That
Any
doesn't work all
So,
the time.
did you have something you would like to talk about tonight?
Yeah, it was something that's kind of been like I've been thinking about for a while, and I keep seeing it and this just applies to so many things. I've seen it over the years as, like for years and years I've been a comic book geek and, in that world of geekdom and such. And I also am a sports fan, and, I've paid attention to politics and all this kind of stuff. And unfortunately, over the years, they've all kind of blurred in that basically everybody, you root for your team, but then dump on the other team kind of thing. And I get it to some extent, right? Like if you're a Yankees fan, you hate the Red Sox and vice versa. If you're a Republican, you don't care for Democrats. I get it, right? Like, and that's fine. I can live with that. Like, we're not all going to be the same, and that's okay. We don't need to be on the same team. But what I can't understand and what bugs me, and this, I've got a couple articles that I'll have in the show notes for anyone who wants to kind of deeper dive into this. I'm not going to get real heavy into articles on this one, but it's the idea of, and the one that really stood out to me lately more so is wrestling, right? Like, I love pro wrestling. WWE's been around forever, right? During the 90s, WCW came up and there were people that were like, I love WCW and WWE is the worst thing ever, right? And vice versa. Ooh. I love WWE and WCW is the worst thing ever, And now we're at a point to where there's AEW, and that's the kind of number 2 company. And people constantly online are very much just like, almost like you can't, if you like one, you can't like the other kind of a thing. And it's like, well, why? It's all wrestling. It's just a different presentation of wrestling. And yes, both have things that they do very well. Both have things that they could improve in. But it's like, why? And I'm not even talking like, oh, well, you just like WWE kind of thing. But it's like people get into like the most heated things over this. And I'm using wrestling because it's fairly innocuous, right?
Yeah.
You can pretty much take anything that has a fandom and watch how the fandom, and the only thing I can tell you is it's just one thing, and it's the internet. But fandom has become so toxic. And I understand, being a fan comes from the word fanatic, which means you're a little crazy for, a situation, you're obsessed to an extent. But I don't understand why there's such a need to go out of your way to yell at somebody else about what they like sucks. Why can't you just instead yell about how much you like what you like? You know what I mean? That kind of thing. Just champion your own things. If you love Taylor Swift, great. I don't. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to, oh, she's terrible. She's the worst. I don't care. If you like her, great. I'm going to sit over here and listen to my whatever I listen to,
I have a theory.
Okay.
I believe for a long time in our country that we have been pushing everybody's equal. Everything is equal. Everyone gets a trophy. And people are now having a huge backlash, and it's the I have to be right movement.
Yes. Oh, for sure. That's a large part of it. I do understand that. And again, I understand years ago, you couldn't organize the hate the way you can organize hate now with the internet and stuff,
That plays a huge role in it.
Right.
What I really think it breaks down to is that people have been compromising on so many things. And by no means, I hope the audience does not misinterpret what I'm saying, because I truly believe that compromise is the right way.
Yeah.
But we have taken a society that is not necessarily known for compromise very well, put them in a situation for the last, 10, 20 years where you're doing nothing but compromising. And all of a sudden we're in a situation that everybody has been compromised and, for lack of a better word, a variation of oppressed, that now they're going too far the opposite direction.
Yeah, I get that. Well, and the thing is, like, backing up just a bit on that, is that people actually haven't been forced to compromise in most of these ways. They feel that they have because they don't actually understand equality.
I agree with you.
You don't have to lose for someone else to gain. Like, that doesn't always hold, but that's the way it's being pushed to people,
I agree with that. But you also have to understand, though, as we've spoken about before, feelings are...
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Perception's 90% of the situation, So if someone is feeling like they have no voice or feeling like they're oppressed, they are going to fight back. I'm not saying it's appropriate. I'm not saying it's...
No, I know. I get that.
Where I think a lot of it's coming from.
What I don't understand in all of this, though, is even if you dislike something, why take your time to go find other people? Like, okay, we all want to fit in, but why not try to fit in with people who talk about how great AEW is and just agree with them, right? Just talk about how great the matches were Wednesday night or Friday night. Just do that, right? Like, there's a reason I started listening to a podcast called Marty and Sarah Love Wrestling, because it's actually two people who talk about how much they love pro wrestling. It's not people being snarky and dumping on the product. They talk about how the product is, what they like, and they're critical at times, but they don't harp on it. You know what I mean? They don't stay on it. And some of these other podcasts, you listen to them and it's just gripe. And it's like, why are you watching it then? If it's so terrible and it makes you so upset, why are you paying attention to this? Because this isn't like politics. I can understand, because politics can actually affect us, right?
Yeah.
But because you love the Red Sox does not affect your life. Like, it actually affects your life. You're not going to lose your job typically if the Red Sox start losing, unless you work for the Red Sox, kind of a thing. You're not going to lose your job. You're not going to, die from the Red Sox losing, those kind of, I guess you could, if depending on how fanatical you are, but you know what I mean? In general, politics are a little different. That can affect your money. That can affect your health care, all that. I get it a little more into that, but I don't understand it in the others. And I've always been a fan of these things, but I understand I'm not an obsessive fan kind of person. But I just will never understand. And there's articles that I have in here too that actually talk about this on a relationship level, how a relationship can go from somebody loving you into an obsession into a hate, or a loving you to hating you obsession situation. And how it can become very harmful and toxic. I have one article here that's about toxic fandom in sports, because, we're hitting a point to where, and even concerts, you see in the last few months, you've seen how many performers get hit in the face with something.
Mm-hmm.
So why are you at a concert if you're going to throw something at somebody? Like, why go spend money or waste your time to hurt somebody? It's just so asinine, And no matter how you're feeling, like, even if you are feeling oppressed and all that kind of stuff, it's like, I get it, but you don't have to live in that negativity. I understand how easy it is to do. I did it for years, but even still, it was like, I don't, with these things are all optional things.
Yeah.
So why are you, like I said, politics, I understand a little bit more, because politics can have real world in your life, actual ramifications. But I don't understand the, you're not on my team, so you're awful and wrong and blah, blah, blah. That's stupid. Like you said, that's where compromise comes in. It's good for us to not agree, because if every country agreed on the direction of things, it wouldn't be good, because you do need a dissenting opinion sometimes, just to make sure you've done your due diligence on something. Sometimes you do need a devil's advocate in life,
Sure.
But like I said, I just can't understand with some of this stuff where it's like, you love something I'm just so passionate about wrestling. I hate when it's done wrong. And I'm like, then don't watch it. Don't watch AEW if you think it's that bad. Well, all my friends keep talking about how great it is, and I just don't see it. Then tell them that. Don't watch it. They won't care.
Case of FOMO.
Yeah, it's like they trust me. They won't care. I know people who back in the like I said, in the 90s were all WCW, right? Now, I grew up with WWE. So, I was team WWE because I couldn't help it. Eventually, I was watching both because I just love pro wrestling, But it like I said, if one of the shows gets to where I don't like it, I just quit watching it. Like, why yell and scream at other people over it? It's so dumb. No matter what it is, any TV show, if you love The Sopranos and think it's the greatest thing ever, if somebody else goes, it was all right, you don't need to yell and scream at them. Okay. Art is not meant for everybody, no matter what form it is, It's like, I'll never get it.
I agree with you. I don't understand where the civility went.
Yeah.
In our country.
Right.
Because, with the exception of religion.
Yeah.
For the most part, people have been able to have, reasonable conversations and be able to come to a mutual, we're not going to see eye to eye, and that's okay. But for somehow, some way, I have to be right.
Yeah.
And this fear of missing out seems to have morphed into this giant ball of negativity and aggression. I think everything seems to be so aggressive.
Well, and it's like I just want to ask the people when they do this. It's like, do you even enjoy watching wrestling anymore?
Yeah.
Right? Like, also, it's like, if you think AEW is so bad, when you turn it on, you're immediately going to be watching it through the filter of this is terrible.
Yeah.
And you're going to just be looking for things that are awful. You're not going to be looking for a whole, wow, this was a great match or blah, blah, blah. You can be critical. I don't have no problem with being critical of a product, but it reminds me of like more so when we were younger. Now it still exists, but it's like sports radio used to be the YouTube comments of everything, right? Or not just sports radio, talk radio, because political talk radio has always been garbage as well, for the most part. And it's the same thing. Is that, like I said, now you can find more people who have those same awful opinions on a large scale. But I just, like I said, I can't understand like, I know you're right, is I want to be right. Like, I want to see, I told you it sucks. Like, that's the big thing. And I get that, but it's just, I don't know. It can be dangerous, though, kind of moving into a little bit more. It's like, it can be dangerous because there's been people who've gotten into actual fights over some of this stuff, and it's grown into other dumb stuff. Like, I've seen on dating apps, I've seen on profiles, like, obviously, if you're blah, 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 political viewpoint, swipe left. Again, I can understand that. But when it's like, I've seen ones that are like, if you're an Ohio State fan, swipe left, or if you're a Michigan fan, swipe. And I'm like, really? You can't be with somebody who likes the other team? Like, that's insanity.
Well, I just heard this on the radio since you brought up dating apps.
Yeah.
Bumble is going to be starting something new that it's basically an open net theory.
Okay.
That we are being so specific in our dating profiles and what our likes and dislikes are.
Yeah.
That we are narrowing the pull down so small that we're not going to be able to find the right person because the person we think we want may not be.
Well, and also statistically, it shows that we are terrible at actually pointing out what we really want. Yeah.
So their theory is to launch this, and I don't even know what format it's going to.
Yeah.
But their theory is to have this open net that you have very loose parameters, and you have this big open net, and then from there you narrow things down and that's kind of honestly been my theory on the app.
Well, you should do it anyway. Cast a wide net and then be picky.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's usually what happens, and I am not necessarily proud to say this, but what I do is I swipe until I match up with someone. Then when I match up with someone, I go back and I do a deep dive into their profile.
Right.
Like, I'll do a cursory glance and, look for a couple key points. Yeah. As long as they hit those like 2 or 3 key points and I like their picture, then I swipe.
Well, the way that they say on like Tinder or something like that for optimal use of the app is to swipe right on everybody and then see who you match with and respond accordingly.
Yeah.
And it's basically, now it's not quite what you're doing, but it's a blown up version of what you're doing, basically. Yeah.
Now, keeping that in mind, I've heard quite a few people get frustrated, and lots of them happen to be men, that they match with someone and then that person never responds.
Sure. Well, you never know, because a person, they could be on the app, they could have matched on you months ago and then not use the app anymore. Maybe they found someone, or maybe they just deleted the apps because they never matched. And then, 3 months later, you match with them and they don't use the app anymore. And then you get mad because they don't respond. It's like, they may not use it anymore. It doesn't tell you necessarily, hey, this person hasn't been on in 3 months,
Which kind of circles us back to the initial conversation that we were having, which is, doesn't mean you're bad, just means maybe someone's better, or,
right.
It just, there's so many other things, but where our heads immediately go to is, it must be me or it must be them. And it doesn't need to be, it must be me or it must be them.
Yeah.
There's a whole, like if you open up your perspective, our perspectives have gotten so narrow.
Yeah.
Again, if you open up the perspective a bit, like you said, maybe the person's not on the app anymore.
Right.
Maybe, who knows? Maybe they passed away.
Right. Yeah. You never know. Right. Yeah.
You don't know. Like if someone
Because think about it, right?
passed away tomorrow, someone's not going to go onto my dating apps and close
Right.
my app.
I was just going to say that. It's like you look at your phone and how many apps you've signed up for, whether it's games, dating sites, whatever it is. That nobody's going to fool with closing all of that out, most likely. Not unless you leave them a list of here's all the apps I have and here's all my passwords, Please, upon my death, close all of these. I think what we're coming around to here, I think what we're finding is that what I think we're seeing is that the gray area that used to be where a lot of us lived and compromised and talked is going away.
Yeah.
People are very much looking for black or white. And I don't mean that in any racial connotation. I just mean, it's, again, you're either a Yankees fan or a Red Sox fan. And the only time you can find a gray area is if like a little kid is involved, right?
Right.
Or something along a charity situation. Then, okay, we can, let's go donate blood, and see who wins kind of a thing. But in the end, we'll shake hands because, hey, we all just donated a bunch of blood and helped people. Like those
And
kind of things.
Actually being the Hatfields and the McCoys.
That we'll just scream at each other. Yeah. So I think maybe that's what it is. Maybe the gray area is just disappearing. And the problem is the gray area is actually where in politics is a perfect example. The gray area is really where most people are. Most people don't full on lean one side or the other. They've got things that they, if you had a list, you could maybe pick and choose from whatever. And they're kind of in that middle ground and that gray area. And I think like sports is a little different. Sports is a little more cut and dried because, typically if I'm a Yankees fan, I got to hate the Red Sox. It just comes with the territory or, whatever. But, like if you're a Michigan fan, I'm a fan of Michigan and whoever's playing Ohio State this week kind of a thing. That's how sports typically will work, and whatever. But as long as it stays cordial and stuff, I don't care. Giving each other the business, great. That's part of the whole thing. But, like I like Star Trek and Star Wars. It's like, well, I like Marvel and DC, kind of a thing. I'm not going to, if you go, which one's better? I'm going to go, neither. Like they both have their merits, they're different.
Like to have an in-depth conversation, we can go there.
Yeah.
This character is better than this character in these ways.
Yeah.
But they have this character, which is better than this character in these ways.
Right. But I'm not going to yell and scream at you if you tell me Batman is the best DC character, even if I disagreed with you, or if you tell me Wolverine is the best Marvel character. I'm not going to yell and scream at you over it. It's like, I'll be like, okay, we can have a conversation. Again, we find the gray area and that's where we talk. And then we walk away because we're adults, Yes. But maybe that's it. Maybe it's just the erosion of the gray area is the real problem here, because that's where the conversations happen and that's where the compromise happens, and there's just less of that. And maybe that's what it is. People are just seeking out only people with,
similar interests.
Yes. Which holds because they do show that like, if you believe a certain way about whatever the topic is, political or whatever, that you tend to seek out people who have, you look for echo chambers.
Yeah.
Think about on social media, how many people, if they don't agree with you politically, how many people block those people, and in the past, you wouldn't have necessarily blocked them. You would have maybe had conversation, maybe some you would block, the extreme kind of people. But for the most part, you would be like, no, like Heno, I know for a long time, Heno would just embrace people and have conversations with them. And sometimes it gets heated, and that's okay. But in the end, it was still like, hey, neither of us was disrespectful in this conversation. We can still be friends, Yeah. And that's where it gets me. And like I said, especially when you love the same thing. Like if I'm a Marvel fan, why do I need to scream at a DC fan? It's great that there's comics for everybody. If I like old Marvel, I'm not going to scream at the new Marvel fans, because so many people now feel included in comics that 20 years ago, like even when I had my shop, how many women came into that place, right? Not a lot, but more than the place I worked for in high school. We were making progress, right? Women felt a little more, hopefully, I actually think we had a decent amount of women that came into our place, because I think, trust me, compared to other comic shops,
Well, no, I mean,
Yeah.
that's it. Compared to other comic shops,
yes,
absolutely.
that's what I'm
Well-
talking about, is other shops at the time, there was like no women that came in. And,
And we
yeah,
you had a few regulars and stuff,
Yeah.
but for the most part, it was still
Yeah.
a guy fest.
oh, of course, because that's how it was, though. But like now, you've got more women writing comics. You've got more
100%.
more female characters that aren't just Wonder Woman, basically, and that opens the doors. And now you see tons of women that are geeks and love games and all this kind of, like, the doors have really opened more in that world, which is fantastic, except that, of course, you still have stupid toxic men that are, you're not a real fan. It's like, again, going to what we're talking here, it's like, you like the same things. Why are you mad that a girl likes them too, or a woman likes them? Like, what is wrong with you?
I'm just gonna say it. Beating Chris Pate with my cat deck.
Yeah.
Highlight.
Yeah, it's why I said I don't know. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what it is. We need to find our way back to the gray area on a lot of stuff. And as a person who, I struggled mightily with this for years, to where I'm very much a black and white person. I not like I used to be. I try much harder now to not be, to understand that there's nuance and stories you don't know behind the scenes on a lot of things, and to be more like, take a step back before you go half cocked on somebody. But it's the way my brain works is very right and wrong kind of thing. And again, unfortunately, there's times where wrong is right, and there's times where right is wrong. Again, we talked, what was it, last time, about how you can be dead right going through an intersection. You can be right as rain and die. So, and that's what gray area is sometimes. And there's times for gray area, and then there's other times where it's like, well, we can't really smudge the line here, or this could get really ugly.
Well, what is it that, in the wise words of Heno, does it need to be said?
Yeah.
Does it need to be said by me? Does it need to be said right now? And I've always added to this, would saying it get me to where I want to go?
Right. I think that's the key, right? It's like, what is your end game in pushing so much hateful energy into something that you used to love?
Yeah.
Right? Like, as a kid, right? And pro wrestling is a thing. Like, where you put your negativity in pro wrestling is toward the heels. The people who are the bad guys is who you're supposed to be yelling and screaming and booing. The people you like, you're supposed to be yelling and screaming in favor of, kind of a thing.
Yes.
But now there's so many people. John Cena is a great example, right? John Cena started out as somebody that a lot of people loved, but then he felt like everybody, like a bunch of wrestling fans, thought that he was being crammed down our throats. So people started to not like him based on the fact that it was something he couldn't control. Vince McMahon decides who gets the push, not John Cena. And everybody would be mad at John Cena. So it came out to where, he would come out and half the crowd was cheering, half the crowd was booing. And from that point, it happened again with Roman Reigns, when they tried to really push Roman Reigns, and fans were like, no, we're not doing a John Cena again. And they just started booing him until eventually they let him turn heel. And when he turned heel, they full on embraced that. And the crowd, but now, even as a full on heel, the crowd cheers him when he comes out, and it's like, make up your mind. You don't even know how this is supposed to work. But like I said, that's what we're supposed to do. When you're a Yankees fan, when the Red Sox take the field, you're supposed to boo the heck out of them. That's what that's where you do. You don't need to throw things, hurt anybody, threaten their families. Like, God, these two women had a match on AEW Dynamite Wednesday, and it was not a great match, right? And unfortunately, like, they're trying real hard. It's not that anybody goes out and was like, let's just go stink it up.
Yeah.
They all want to do well. Unfortunately, things just don't go your way. And it wasn't the greatest of matches. And people were just brutal to them. Like, the one woman is a thick woman, and she got so much, like, you're fat, you're slow, you look like a man, like, all this stuff. And I was like, what are we doing here? She knows if she had a good match or not. They know.
Yeah.
you know, but unfortunately it's not, you know, if they could rewind it, redo it and do it better, you know, they would do it in a second.
Yeah.
It happens. People have bad matches sometimes. And, you know, like I said, they're trying really hard, but it doesn't, sometimes two people just don't have charisma in pro wrestling in the ring. It's just not great because there's just nothing there, you know? And then you wake up and you read that and you're like, what? It's like, you're giving the rest of us a black eye. Like, quit that, you know? Like, you know, we come to a point where WWE has actually had women main event pay-per-views, right? That would have never happened. That only happened rarely. Like, it didn't really happen in the 90s. Occasionally, a couple women like Lita and Trish would headline or have the main event on Raw. That was very rare, though. You know,
If it made it to any sort of a bigger event, it was a joke match.
generally, yeah.
Yeah.
During that time, it would have been a bra
Yeah.
panties match or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now we're at a point that they don't even do those matches anymore. The women do the same kind of matches the guys do. Ladder matches, steel
That's
cages,
awesome.
all that stuff, right? And they get to headline at times, and that's how it should be, because there's some of the women that are every bit as good as some of the men, you know? And then you got idiots that pull this garbage, you know, that as far as you feel it moving forward, it's like, you're pulling us back to the 80s or the early 90s when women were just models that didn't give a crap about actually wrestling. They just,
Mhm.
you know, they just,
Stand here, look pretty.
and that was the job. I mean, it was no shade on the
Yeah.
women. That was the job.
That was the job.
Yeah. That's deliberately what WWE went out and looked for,
Mhm.
was, you know, models that would look good in bra and panties so that they could have in bra and panty matches or wrestling in oil or whatever, you know. And like I said, thank God they don't do that anymore. And we're at a point now that the women's matches are not the bathroom breaks at live
Yeah.
events now. It used to be whenever the women would go on, you'd see just people, you watch it on TV, you just see people flocking to the concession stands. Now you don't. They stick around. It's awesome. And then, like I said, and then you see garbage like this, and you're like, oh, yep, there's still Neanderthals in the fan base.
Oh, yes.
You know,
We all have an Uncle Joey.
but it's like, you know, don't just please don't be that person. You know, like I said, if something gets you so riled up that you feel like you have to spew toxicity, take a step back and look at, do you enjoy this anymore?
Yeah.
If you don't, please remove it from your life, because you're just harming yourself. Like, just, you know, just breeding all that hatred in yourself and then spewing it at other people. You know, that's
Yeah.
like I said, if you love something, instead of griping all the time, find a group of people who instead talk about how good the matches were. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to do as a WWE fan. It's hard to do. There's a lot of groups I've been part of and then left because it devolves. You know, if there's one bad Raw, well, yeah, meh, for like, you know, and it's like, okay, we get it. It was a bad episode. It happens.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, not every TV show has winners all the time, you know, like,
Very true.
Listen,
Very true.
you know?
No, I mean, I think we definitely touched on some very big, in-depth topics that I highly encourage everybody to spend some more time with. I know we don't have all the time in the world to explore them, and
yeah,
quite frankly, I know I want to explore it further on my own too.
yeah,
I think it's quite fascinating to see, you know, from a sociological perspective, where our society is going to, and why. I mean, it's interesting, but I would say the bottom line to all of this is make sure that you keep perspective. We're losing our perspective on so much right now.
Yeah.
And the second is to really question yourself on, is this behavior getting me to where I want to go? Is
Yeah.
this, you know, is me saying this, me yelling at people, me getting all this carried away about stuff? What's my end game? What's in it for me?
right. Yeah. How does this improve my life? And I'm not even
Yeah.
trying to be Johnny positive, but it really, like, how does this make me feel better? You know? And odds are a lot of it's probably that people are unhappy in some other aspect, and this just gives them an outlet for their anger. But
Possibly,
that's what therapy is for. But, you know, you know, learn how to actually deal with your situation. But
True.
Like I said,
Yeah.
if something becomes, you're such a fan of something that it becomes mostly toxic to you, it's time to take a step back and go back to what about it was what you love, and can you find that again? And one of the best ways, like pro wrestling or baseball, are easy, because the easiest way to get back to loving it is to watch kids.
Yes.
Right? Listen, I've been cynical about wrestling and stuff. I'll criticize it, blah, blah, blah. You know it. I've never not loved it. It's always been around for me, and I'm unapologetic about loving it. When I went and took my one nephew, and it was his first thing ever, the most fun things there were the kids sitting in front of us that were hoping so much that AJ Styles would show up. And then when AJ Styles came out, and the kid had his gloves, and he's got the wristbands and all this, the gear, the t-shirt, he's got all his gear, and he went crazy when AJ Styles came out, right? And my nephew buying 100% into hating The Miz because The Miz is such a good heel. And it's just like, I don't like that guy. And I'm like, buddy, you're eating right out of his hands. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to do. And it was awesome.
Yeah.
You know, I loved seeing that it can still do that with people, because that's what it did to me as a kid. Whenever Hulk Hogan was on TV, I went stupid, you know. Whenever Iron Sheik came out, I was, you know, because he was the heel, you know, and he's going against Hogan, you know. So, and baseball's the same way. When you find somebody who gets too cynical about baseball, it's like, go watch kids at a baseball game. And a lot of them, you know, love the idea of maybe catching a ball or whatever. And you see that innocence again. And it's like, oh yeah, we become jerk adults and lost this. We become too cynical, and it's, oh yeah, it's a sport. The wrestling is a soap opera, you know, like with athletics, you know, it's like we've forgotten what we loved about this. And I'd rather go do that and rekindle my love for something than keep spewing hatred, you know?
No, I think that's great. And I think it's a really great buttonhole right there. So, well, folks, we covered a lot of stuff in this episode, and a lot of really good stuff that I'm proud of. And I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to continue the conversation. So would Brian, so would Henno. So if you'd like to reach out to us and continue this conversation with us, please email us at thecrazylifepodcast@outlook.com, and our website, crazylifepodcast@weebly.com. If you'd like to reach out to me directly, go ahead and shoot an email. Just say, hey, Jen, and I'll be able to get that and respond to you. And Brian, what do you got going on?
You can also find me on basically any social media. For the most part, I'm at Stunami on it. I'm on like all the Twitter clones basically and all that stuff. So if you're on there and want to follow me, I'm at Stunami. Because if nothing else, I jumped on them so that I could get my username.
Heck yeah.
So if you want to listen to my other podcast, which is me and my best friend just talking about pop culture or whatever stuff, like this week we talked about the band Creed is reuniting for a 90s music cruise. Talk about how scientists are saying that ChatGPT is getting dumber. They announced that there's going to be mustard Skittles, apparently. Yeah. We talked about the Harley Quinn TV show and Secret Invasion. And then we also, I talked about how they're making pops based on the Muppet Christmas Carol, which I'm very excited to get. And also my Twitter situation, so if you're into any of that, give us a listen if you would. Show's not safe for work though, so please, be careful of that. If you want to find Henno, he's on Twitter at IdaHenno, or he's on Facebook at Henno Heiter, or, if you contact any of the show links, we can, send you a link to him or pass something along. Our show is on Facebook at facebook.com/group/Crazy Life Podcast, and on Twitter at the Crazy Life Pod. I think, right?
Yeah.
I'm looking for it in my list and I'm not seeing it. I might have accidentally deleted it. Anyway, we're part of the Tangent Bound Network, which can be found at tangentboundnetwork.com. So please go check out the other shows. Jeez, I can't talk now all of a sudden. There's shows on there. Jeez. You know what it is? I'm talking and reading at the same time, and I'm not reading what I'm saying. So it's, I'm throwing myself off. Boy. All right. So yeah. There's also a list in the show notes of kind of things we talked about from this episode. And then also there's helpful links like the suicide prevention line, the trans lifeline, CODA.org, stuff like that. So if you're looking for those kind of things, please check that out. Yeah. And that is always, of course, if you need help, please reach out. And, if you can, please reach out to your friends and make sure they're doing okay. And, because you just never know. I actually was just telling Jen about a scenario on Twitter a couple weeks ago or a week ago, something like that, where, there was somebody that was having a pretty bad manic kind of breakdown. And, and I talked with them a little bit just to make sure they were okay. Because I happen to recognize it because I see it, and also something I don't talk about enough on here, I think, is we bring up occasionally, which is that by learning some of the stuff, like what happens when people go through these kind of things, you can see it sometimes before they can, and you can help at times. And, I just saw a thing on the news recently, and they were talking about like teenage suicide and how, because there was a fundraiser for a woman who had lost her son to suicide. And, they were talking about teaching everyone to be kind to one another and not bully. And I was like, that's all very important. But also she said that the kids showed no signs. And I was like, well, that's where we might disagree, because he might have shown signs, but you also may not have known what to look for. And I'm not criticizing her. My parents wouldn't have known either, as depressed as I was. So I'm just, especially parents, but anybody, try to learn about some of this stuff so that you can look for some of the signs of these things and maybe help, somebody else or catch something before it happens. And that's for everybody. Like I said, that's not, I mean, no shade at that woman or anything else, but it's just, I think, a bigger part of the complete circle of helping here. So, and with that, of course, please be kind to one another, as we always, say on here, and please help when you can. Watch the woman but as I was walking up to the, because a lot of the stores, I don't know if you noticed this lately, a lot of the grocery stores have put doors on their cases where like their produce is, like the cold produce and the cheese and stuff. And I was looking at it the other day. There's a woman at Food Town up the road, and she's in one of those motorized carts, and she could not she was having trouble. Trying to get the door open, navigate the cart, and then reach for cheese. And as soon as I saw that, and I'm like, that seems way less accessible than it was before, because now she has to navigate a door she didn't have to navigate before.
Right.
Even though the cases are still basically the same inside, now she also, in those carts, you have to try to, get the cart. And I was just like, can I help you? She's like, would you please? I was like, is there anything else you need, like all the way down this, the dairy aisle? Because like, I'll for sure grab anything you need. And she goes, no, I just needed some cheese. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, yeah, I don't care for this. And I told her, I was like, you should definitely mention this to them up front, that this is making it harder.
Yeah.
And I it's not something I think in the past I would have stopped and thought about. Because even with all the graphic design stuff I took, I still don't know how to design for accessibility. I was never taught that. That was something we weren't taught, because it wasn't something that was brought to a lot of people's attention in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a little different. Like when people do websites and all this stuff, it's like if you can add accessibility options, you should, like if it can read text and different stuff. But it's stuff that, it's so easy to not think about it because it doesn't affect us. So that's why, like that, I wouldn't have thought about it. I never thought about the doors being there. And then when I saw that, and I was like, that's making her life worse. Like,
oh yeah,
So yeah, but anyways, like I said, be kind if you can, and help others out whenever possible. So
absolutely. And I have 3 things before I give my final closing. 1, I vote with. Highly recommend it. Normally won't talk politics, but highly recommend. Go check out the website I vote with. It gives you a really great in-depth questionnaire, basically, about the candidates and the sides and parties. And you might actually be a little surprised at who they recommend best fits you. So that's A. B, you mentioned the Muppets.
Yeah.
My brother's dating profile says I'm what was it? I'm Dr. I'm Bunsen looking for my beaker.
Oh, okay. There you go.
I'm Dr. Bunsen.
That's good. I like that.
I did too. I'm like, that suits you. That's perfect. That's funny. That's awesome. And third, the mustard M&Ms. If it's honey mustard, I could potentially see it.
Oh, no, it's just yellow French's mustard Skittles.
Oh, good God.
Yeah,
Never mind.
they have a thing on their website. If you go to their website where you can like win a bag of them, and of course I entered it because I hope to win them.
course.
But if it was like just sitting on a standee at the store, there's no way I'm eating those. Aside from like, let's get them for the podcast and make content type of thing, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Dollar bet
Ugh,
stuff.
just mustard. Eh.
You.
Yeah.
All right, folks. You guys go out there and have the best week you absolutely possibly can. Help each other, help yourself, and spread the love, for God's sakes.